All right, everybody. Welcome to the Combatcast. It's UFC 281 weekend. It's the man they call Dave and Chevarooney. And we are going to talk about this week's upcoming pay-per-view that we're both excited about. But before we do, here's the intro. Are you a fan of pro wrestling, comedy, and combat sports? Then we have the podcast for you because we cover that and much, much more.
Do you like to debate with your friends? Do we have the perfect segment for you? It's the 531, where we take any given subject, break it down to a top 5. From there, we debate it down to 3, and then into that number 1 spot.
If you want to get a hold of us, find us on our social medias. Search Working Fans Podcast on any major social media platform. And if you want to find the podcast, search for us on any major podcast platform, as well as YouTube.
Working Fans Podcast. We put in the work so you don't have to.
All right, Chevy, we are back. Hey, so man, I'm really excited about this weekend. I almost want to jump the gun, but tell everybody else what we got coming up.
All right, November 19th, we're going to be previewing UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Spivak. And then November 26th, there's no UFC, so we'll be previewing the 2022 PFL Championships. And then we'll be moving on to December 3rd, UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Holland. Great matchup.
Thompson versus Holland, yeah. Holland out of early retirement. He's back, baby.
Yeah, short retirement.
All right, man. Let's just, before we even, I know there's some new stuff we want to talk to you about. Let's recap this past weekend's fights a little bit. And I think one of the news stories is going to pertain to one of these fights, so we can address that then.
Okay, so and just go over the couple prelim fights early on. Polyana Viana had a tremendous combination in her fight against Jin Yu Fry, got the win. And then Benito Lopez, he missed weight and still got dismantled by Mario Batista in the first round. You don't see that too often where a fighter misses weight and then ends up be the one to lose.
Yeah.
He hadn't been in there for a long time, so ring rest might have been an issue, but also Mario's just great, I think.
Record number of fighters miss weight for this card, too. So,
right. I believe it ended up being 4. Originally it was 5, but one of the fighters cut all their hair off to make weight on the second attempt. So,
bless her heart.
Record tying 4 fighters miss weight. All right, let's move on to the main card. So Grant Dawson got a 3rd round rear naked choke versus Mark Madsen. Did you see this one?
I did. So I'll just quickly what I noticed here. Going into this, Madsen, he had that undefeated record, so many accolades, and I thought, okay, I was like, but like he hadn't really super impressed me. Like he looked good, but I'm like, this doesn't look like the guy who's going to be like the next breakout star to me. Grant Dawson, on the other hand, wow, what a great game plan. I was kind of because he got caught with a punch right in the opening, which surprised me because I didn't think Madsen would honestly do that. I thought it'd just be wrestling, but he took it and he came right back. And the commentators, like they were so slick, they pointed it out to me too, like because I was like, man, he's beating him at wrestling. But Madsen is such a great Greco-Roman wrestling, and he's wrestling like the legs, and he's doing different things that they normally wouldn't do, like in Greco-Roman wrestling. And like you said, he gets to choke. This guy, Dawson, he's won so many in a row. He kind of hinted, I think he wants Tony Ferguson next. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. Grant Dawson he's one to watch for, I think.
Yeah, I agree. He was super impressive. Like you said, impressive that he used wrestling to get that. He was looking for praise from DC afterwards. It was a great fight. I'm not sure what Madsen's ceiling is, like you were talking about last week. Mm-hmm. But Grant is definitely one to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely.
So we'll move on to Tagir Ulanbekov. Got a 1st round guillotine versus Nathan Manis. You saw this one?
I did. And so we'll talk about our news item here a little bit too. And basically what I had wrote down is like right off the get, right off the gate, Minor throws that leg kick, gets checked, and he's hurting, and then he's clipped, and he gets taken apart. And
that's the next fight. That's the next fight.
Okay.
Tagir Ulanbekov versus Nathan Manis. Yeah, that was the fight.
Highlighted. I'm an asshole. So, okay. Tagir, yeah, basically what I just noticed this one is that his grappling, he just comes off really strong for me, like at a flyweight. He just looked like he had complete control here for me, and I'm interested to see what his ceiling is. I saw he has a loss from Tim Elliott, and Tim Elliott to me is one of those guys who, if you're not ready for on your game, he could always catch you. But yeah, interesting to see where Tagir goes for this in the flyweight division.
Yeah, Tagir did what all Dagestani seemed to do, and that's make the fight look really easy. Nathan is no slouch. He was coming down a weight class also, and he had a bunch of regional titles, so he's a great fighter, but Tagir is another one to keep an eye out for.
I just want to say how great it is that you're reading off these names. That's actually what threw me, because I was like, oh, yeah, these names, because it's the next name.
Yeah, so this is the fight that had some controversy. This is Nurdenbeki Shaylian. Got a first-round TKO versus Derek Minner.
Yes, and like I said, Minner, he throws that kick, he gets checked, and then he gets taken apart, which to me was like, that's unfortunate. It always is in these situations, and to me, it's always interesting because it's like, you always say, oh, well, like you got to give, always like kind of like, yeah, I do, but this is also just doesn't happen enough where I consider it, like to me, it's kind of still kind of a fluke thing in some ways, but that leads us into the news story.
Right. So there is being an investigation into the betting practices done right before this fight happened. Apparently, there was a huge amount of bets put on Shaylian to win within the first 2 rounds. So it's possible that it leaked out of the camp, which would be Glory MMA with James Krause, that there was an injury to Minner before this fight. And, people knew that there was a likelihood that he would not make it all the way through the fight. So just a little background, James Krause, who we are huge fans of here, He has a podcast. He's very into betting on MMA fights. He says he's made more money betting than he did actually fighting in the UFC with his picks.
Might have been a bad time to say that, but go ahead.
Right. So, I don't think, I don't want to believe that there was any nefarious betting activity. I can't see Krause betting against his own guy. I mean, he was
always came off like a classy guy, but yes.
But it's possible maybe that, he told a couple of his buddies or whatever, don't bet on this one. My guy's hurt. And then they blabbed to somebody, and that went on to everyone else. And there was a huge betting line. Also, I didn't hear this theory, but it's possible because his opponent is Chinese, and there's such a huge population in China that they just bet at the last minute and swayed the line. I was telling you before the podcast started that in the NBA, when they used to do fan voting for the All-Star game, Yao Ming was always the most voted for player every single year he played because all of China would vote for him. So it is possible that they just swayed the betting line by betting late. Like I said, I don't think Krause probably had any nefarious betting that dealt with this. I'm sure he knew ahead of time. Maybe he told a couple guys and they blabbed, but we're going to find out with this investigation, I'm sure.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens. But I'm with you. I like to believe Krause is just a solid dude, and it's probably just something bad timing just to make that comment. That's all.
Right. So we'll move on. Co-main event, Neil Magny gets a 3rd round Darce. Love me a Darce versus Daniel Rodriguez.
Yeah, Magny puts on a great pace as always, constantly moving. Rodriguez, D-Rod, this guy, does he not know how to throw like just a jab? Like everything, it looks like it's just power coming at you. Yeah. And he rocked Magny a few times, But it was a back and forth fight to me. It was interesting to watch because I thought Magny was getting the better in certain clinches, but I also thought D-Rod was hitting the more power punches. But then, Magny does what he does. He eventually got that takedown, and then got him to the ground. And then, like you said, he slipped in that beautiful Darce. Magny gets the win, gets the record for most wins at welterweight in the history of the UFC. Good for him, one of the good guys. Wants a fight with Gilbert Burns. I don't think that works out well for him. But on one hand, this guy's such a grinder. Gilbert's not fighting anybody. I'd like to see him get the fight.
I believe that Gilbert said on Twitter that the UFC had mentioned a matchup for him. So, but nothing's been announced, so they could easily change that. Yes, absolutely. Shout out to Neil Magny for setting that record. He, passed the great GSP for 20 wins in the welterweight division. Absolutely impressive. He looked great. I thought that Father Time might be coming for him before this fight. That's what I said. He looked as great as ever. He did exactly what he always does. He relied on his cardio, his wrestling, and used his experience, his fight IQ to get this win. So good on him. D-Rod will be back dismantling somebody soon, I'm sure. He's just a Terminator in there, but shout out to Neil Magny.
I feel like D-Rod has a greater potential, too, in some ways. I feel like if he can just slow down, maybe tighten up some of his game and certain things, he just has that power. So, a few things, D-Rod could be more of a force, but it's just, man.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know how, hats off from to keep the cardio that he does for just throwing that many haymakers.
Right. I think that Neil Magny's been in the UFC longer than D-Rod's been actually training MMA. So,
right.
That's always going to be a tough matchup for him. But he definitely has potential for sure. Move on to the main event. Amanda Lemos, 3rd round TKO over Marina Rodriguez.
So, one thing that was fascinating about this to me, first off, congrats to Lemos. Great finisher. She does it again. But what was interesting was the commentators, like Cormier in particular, was asking her about, maybe you're next for time. Why not you after Weili and Esparza? And I thought, yes, Lemos has looked good. She's beaten everybody. But about 2 fights before, she got stopped by Jessica Andrade. So to me, Andrade should be the one who's waiting for the winner of this matchup. I'd like to see Lemos fight Rose if Rose is going to keep fighting, which I think she is. And I think that would be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. Andrade should be next after this. And I also think Lemos and Rose is a great matchup.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back. We just have one news thing to talk about. Just the fact that Shane Burgos had to pull out of his PFL debut against Marlon Moraes due to injury. He's being replaced by Shimon Moraes. I don't know anything about the guy personally, but bummer. I was looking forward to Shane's debut for sure, and I thought Marlon would be a good matchup, but I'm rooting for Marlon now.
Me too. I want Marlon to do well, and I hope we get that matchup with Shane down the road.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to what we're super excited for, UFC 281, Adesanya versus Pereira. There's actually some Fight Pass prelims for this one. They have some good names on there. Sung Woo Choi, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Matt Frivola. They're all on the Fight Pass prelims, but we won't go over all those fights. Let's move on to the regular prelims. So I have Erin Blanchfield versus Molly McCann. Tough fight for Molly. I think Erin's a 380 favorite or something like that. Wow. But this is a big step up in competition for Molly. Excited to see how she looks. You got any thoughts on this one?
Meatball Molly is one of those great homers, when they have the big UK fights, and she's great to have on that card. But this is where we're going to really see, without the favorable matchup, without the home field advantage, what she can do. I'm rooting for her. I like her a lot. But like you said, this is a big step up in competition. I don't even want to really pick this one. I'm happy. we'll get to the other fights, but this one I'm definitely I don't know. I like Molly. Something about Meatball Molly. I just like her a lot. I don't want to really pick against her yet.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Spann. They're not doing Reyes any favors after his layoff. Obviously, he had those 2 bad knockouts.
Yeah.
And they're giving him a monster in Ryan Spann. So
yes.
Reyes is the favorite. He's the favorite, but and he's gonna have to worry about that ring rust. So I'm not gonna make a pick in any of these prelims, but
I will pick on this one.
What do you think?
Okay, so I like Reyes a lot, first off. And I'm sensitive to this a little bit because, like you, I'm a fan of Gustafsson. And I look at Reyes, he was just one of those guys that was so close to greatness. Mm-hmm. And then he just didn't quite get it, and then he got a couple bad losses after that. And it just seems like he hasn't been able to put it together. And I look at this matchup and I want Reyes to do well. And I kind of want to root for him. But I feel like I've been down this road before. And he might be the favorite, but I got Ryan Spann. I think Ryan Spann, I've talked about his podcast before. He's explosive. I just like the way this guy fights, and I think this will be a big night for Ryan Spann. I'm going to say Ryan Spann is going to catch him, TKO, probably round 2.
If Ryan Spann wins, I think it'll be by TKO as well. So possibly another bad knockout for Reyes. Hopefully not. But the featured bout on the prelims, Bradell versus Renato Moicano. It's almost guaranteed to be an exciting fight. Super good matchmaking on this one. And well placed on the card to be the featured bout on the main event, or the co-main. I'm sorry, the featured bout on the prelims.
Yeah, I'm looking at Moicano now. I'm trying to remember. Like, he fought a lot at featherweight before, right?
Yes. Yeah, I believe he did.
Yeah. So he had a fight he lost against Dos Anjos. I don't doubt Dos Anjos was not fighting at featherweight, obviously. So I don't know how much experience he has fight lightweight, but I feel like McConnell, he's took a little time off here, and Brad Riddell, he's no slouch either, though. But I don't know. I like McConnell. I think there's something about him. Like, I always like the pace, and I feel like he's one of those guys that keeps getting better. Oh, look at this. We got a little breaking news in the comments here.
Yeah, excellent news. Breaking news says producer Joe, Cain Velasquez was granted bail and released. So that's great news as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I got I get some people, like what, but I sympathize. I get it.
Right. Yeah. If that guy really did abuse Cain's daughter, then I think he got away lucky, if you ask me. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the main card. It was absolutely fantastic card. We're starting off super hot. Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. Puelles was one of the fighters that we put up an interview with. Cage My IQ had collaborated with us on, so we know about him. So what do you got for us on these two guys?
All right, Claudio, he's 12-2. He's got 2 KOs, 7 subs, 3 decisions, 5-fight win streak. This guy, I think his only loss was in the Ultimate Fighter, the Latin Ultimate Fighter finale. And he's just a well-rounded fighter. Dan Hooker, 21-12, 10 KOs, 7 subs, 4 decisions. You look at this guy, he's got like performance of the night 3 times, fight of the night twice, but he's on a 2-fight losing streak. And more importantly, he's lost 4 out of his last 5. Tough opponents. But, that's a problem sometimes, right? You get in that streak and you get in your head. And I feel like Claudio is just a guy who's mentally strong. And this is a tough matchup for Hooker. That being said, maybe I'm going with my heart. I like that Claudio was on our show. He's a good kid, but I like the hangman, Dan Hooker. So, and Hooker's going to get it done. I said that he's going to get a finish. So, but late, round 3, TKO.
All right, yeah. So I agree with you on those things. Dan did lose 4 of 5, but those 4 losses were to the top guys, like Islam and Arnold Allen. So, very tough matchups. But like you said, losing that can't be good for your mental state.
Right.
And Claudio is excellent, especially on the ground, especially with knee bars. Dan has very long legs. Grappling is not his specialty either. So really, he needs to keep this fight. He needs to stay disciplined, keep this fight at distance on the feet, and hope that Claudio gets tired and he can land something explosive to TKO him. If that doesn't come around, I honestly think he needs a win so bad that he should just keep distance and outpoint Claudio on the feet. Do anything he can do to not let this fight go to the ground. He needs a win.
Right.
So if it's not the most exciting fight, he can be okay with that. That being said, I think that's a big ask. I think Claudio gets his hands on Dan eventually at some point. And if he gets it down, Dan doesn't have the best, discipline as far as getting up either. I think he just wants to stand up. And I think when he does that in one of these scrambles, Claudio's going to snatch a leg and put some sort of leg lock on him. I'm going to say round 2, Claudio.
You're making me sad, and
I'm making myself sad.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably agree with you then too. All right, yeah, I'll change my pick. God damn it, I don't do this often, but I do think I want to believe in my heart in the Hangman, but yeah, I do think Claudio. It makes a lot of sense. Just has to go to the ground at some point. Round 2 submission. Yeah.
Well, I was tactical about that fight. I will absolutely pick with my heart on this one. So we're gonna go with Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. This is Frankie Edgar's last fight. It's going to be at MSG. What do you got for us?
I could go over Frankie's records and stuff. I really don't have to. I'll just say tied for the most bonuses in UFC history. Former lightweight champion. The guy's a legend. Christo, he's 18-4-2, 8 KOs, 1 subs, 9 decisions, won 6 out of his last 7. I believe one of those was a draw too. Mm-hmm. So something tells me we're not trying to do Frankie any favors here. It's not like the UFC to do people favors on the way out, but I see this could be a competitive fight. I don't think, looking at his record, I don't know. I don't think Chris is going to necessarily knock out Frankie, but I do think he's going to do enough to win a decision. So I think, unfortunately, Frankie does not get it done, although I will be rooting for him.
If there's an MMA god, he will let Frankie win this fight. Chris is nasty on the feet, so maybe Frankie can work in his wrestling to, keep Chris guessing or, just hold him down and tire him out a little bit. I'm hoping the MSG home crowd can get Frankie to that next level for his last fight. I'm going to say he gets a decision win, shows up on the big stage, and he gets a decision win.
You soured me on Hangman. I already picked against Reyes. I'm just going to – nobody's getting any sympathy for me now. It's all over. Frankie's losing. His next fight, Poirier and Chevarooney. I love both of these guys. I'll tell you, though, if I had to pick who I would want to win, I'll let you say what you got to say first. But, yeah.
All right, so possibly fight of the night here, Dustin Poirer versus Michael Chandler. I'll let you go first.
I mean, if we were just doing this by name value, no disrespect to the ladies, this is the main event. Chandler, former Bellator champion in the UFC, such a short time. He's already had 2 performances of the night and a fight of the night. 23-7, 11 KOs, 7 subs, 5 decisions. Poirier, an absolute legend too. It's a crime this guy has not had a title yet. 28-7-1, 14 KOs, 7 subs, 7 decisions. He's won 3 out of his last 4, 2 of those against Conor McGregor. I bring that up because we don't know what that really means anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah, and that's not even a knock against Conor. We just don't know because he hasn't had another opponent really. So, I love both these guys, but I love Dustin just a little bit more. Because Dustin, to me, has just been in the grinding in the UFC just a little bit more, just a tad bit more, and I really am sentimental towards Dustin. But like I said, I got no heart this weekend, so I say Chandler's going to clip him. He's going to catch him, and he's going to get the win, and Chandler knows how to do it on the big stage. So Michael Chandler clips him probably around. It could happen anytime, and I think it will be a good fight. But I'll say round 3, and this will be fight of the night as well.
both of these guys sat Oliveira down while he was the champion.
Right.
They were that close to being champions themselves, but couldn't get it done. But it's super, super hard to pick this fight, not just because they match up so well, but because I love both guys. I was a huge fan of Chandler when he was in Bellator. He was probably my favorite fighter in Bellator at the time when he was there. So obviously I would give Chandler the power advantage.
Yes.
I would give Poirier the technical advantage. I give Poirier the, grappling jiu-jitsu. I give Chandler the wrestling.
Yes.
So I don't know. I'm really excited for this fight. I really don't know if I could pick someone, but I am expecting this to be fight of the night. I just hope it's fairly evenly matched. I don't want it to be, I hope it goes the full 3 rounds or very close to it. I don't want to see someone get knocked out in the first 15 seconds and we get robbed of a great fight.
Yeah, and anything can happen because they are both super talented fighters and they both know how to win. I would say Dustin too, even though I didn't pick him obviously here. I think he's a little more dangerous, like in those clinch situations too.
He's more well-rounded for sure.
He is more well-rounded, but man, Chandler just got that power and he's got that explosive double leg takedown. Yeah. So, and I feel like Dustin's just had too many wars. Not that Chandler hasn't, but just more wars going into this. And I feel that's where this could be a little different. That being said, I like Chandler, but I'm a Poirier guy out of the two. So we'll see.
I hope the fight doesn't go this way necessarily, but I see Chandler's susceptible to leg kicks. He has, been hurt by leg kicks multiple times. I mean, he also kicks very hard, but he's been hurt, like dead-legged by leg kicks. So I'm hoping that Poirier doesn't lean on that, go for the leg kicks. Chandler times him and, cracks him with some overhand right and knocks him out. Because like you said, Dustin has been through a lot of wars at this point, and I don't want to see his chin tested against Chandler's knockout power. So that's a possibility of how the fight goes. I hope we just get a great fight. I know that's a cop-out, but
yeah, I think if Poirier does lose this one, though, this could be his last fight, too.
It's very possible, yeah. I mean, if he's not getting a title, I don't see a lot of other money fights to keep him around. So,
absolutely.
All right, we'll move on to the co-main event, our first title bout of the night, Carla Esparza versus Zhang Weili.
Okay, let's talk about this. Zhang Weili, 11 KOs and 7 subs out of 22 fights. So that's only 4 times she's gone to decision. She's only lost 3 times. I want to say both were to Rose in the UFC, and then she had a loss early in her career. Carla Esparza. I thought her winning the title, I'm not trying to insult this woman. I mean, God bless her. I think she's had a Hall of Fame career, but I thought it was more what Rose didn't do that night. I thought Rose didn't show up. That being said, 19-6, 4 KOs, 4 subs, 11 decisions, 6-fight win streak, and she was the initial strawweight champion to begin with, right? So she's the initial champ. She won the Ultimate Fighter that season to get this title, and then she
beat Rose. She beat
Rose. Yeah, and now she's just done it again. That being said, I don't like this matchup for her. Even like if I want to believe that that was her just putting Rose out of her game last time, and I think some of it was. I don't like this matchup at all. Zhang looked awesome. In her rematch with Rose, it was razor thin. She looked like a much better, and it was a lot of it. I think was training with Cejudo and the wrestling. We're seeing her pick up Francis, joking around, and Francis talking about her power. Oh, and by the way, that's her grappling. That was her, the part she would have had a problem with. Stand up. I don't think this is even a close matchup when you talk about that power of Weili Zhang. I like Weili Zhang. I think she's going to get it done. I think Esparza is tough, and she's been around. So I think she'll avoid getting knocked out super early. By that, I mean round 1. But I think by round 2, this is going to be all Whaley, and I think she's going to put it on. And, she saw what she did with Jacek, too. She's got head kicks, too. So I like Whaley as a new champ here.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you've said. If Zhang has continued to work on her wrestling with Cejudo, then I wouldn't be surprised if she stuffs a couple takedowns and then KOs Carla in the first round. If Carla wants to win, I think the only way she wins is she has to do exactly what she did against Rose, which is basically no action, don't engage at all,
Right.
and, get lucky with some takedowns, to eke out, to point out rounds. I don't think that's going to happen because Zhang is going to come forward. Carla will not be able to run away from Zhang the whole fight, and she can't avoid her power, and she's not as fast as her, and she's not as strong as her. I think it's going to be a rough night in the office for Carla. She seems like a very nice person. She is a great fighter. I just think this is a terrible matchup for her. So I think we're going to see Zhang as a champ, first round KO. Brutal KO probably too.
I mean, I was probably being kind. So, I don't like this matchup at all for Carla.
All right, so we'll move on to the main event, the story of 281, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira.
All right, so Pereira 6-1, 5 KOs, 1 decision. This guy's a former Glory light heavyweight champion. 2015, he was the WGB kickboxing middleweight champion. I bring those up because that's the big story of this fight, is that he holds a couple of victories in kickboxing over Stylebender, including 1 big knockout.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Stylebender, 23-1, 15 KOs, 8 decisions. This is interesting. Although it wasn't completed on America's trusted news source, Wikipedia, he was 75-5 in kickboxing and 6-1 in boxing. I bring that up because it's like over 110 combat fights Stylebender has had. And he broke this down on the UFC Countdown show. And if you look at the fight, he thought he did enough to win the first decision. And he looked surprised that he lost. And even Pereira looked surprised that he won. It ended up going to Brazil. And there was a point where Stylebender was rocked him, and they gave Pereira an 8 count, which Stylebender felt they did to give by him some time, and said then he knew he was behind, and then he came out with some gusto, and he caught him, and he's a totally different guy. Okay, even if you don't believe that, I think the story always comes off, it sounds like, Pereira just kicked his ass, knocked him out, and these weren't like close fights. I don't think that was the case at all. Now, I think Stylebender he's done the work. What I mean by that is I'm not saying Pereira hasn't done the work, but he's 6-1. That's 7 fights as opposed to the 23-1 Stylebender. And if you look at all those wins, they're all by knockouts. He hasn't fought the competition of a Stylebender. He hasn't done nowhere near the work. Now, he is training with Glover, and I do believe he's one of those. Glover, I don't think if you work with Glover, my guess is, he's pushing you and he's trying to make you the best. And so I do think he's probably attempting to do the work, but he just hasn't had the opportunity to do that as much. Now, so if you look at all that, and this is kind of a long way to say this, Stylebender should win this fight. He's the overall better round MMA fighter. There's no reason, this should probably not even be really close when you look at the experience difference in MMA. That being said, and I am picking Stylebender, by the way, I do want to say the whole crazy part about this is the way Izzy likes to fight and the way you hear Styles make fights. I feel like Izzy's going to make this a harder matchup than he has to. And I could totally see him getting clipped because I think he's going to want to strike with him. And I don't think he's afraid to strike with him. I think it's what he likes to do. And he's got a lot of confidence. That being said, there's a different type of MMA striking. I like Stylebender. I like him to get it done. And I have a feeling this is just going to be one of those nights. He's going to catch him. And I think he's going to do what he did to Paulo Costa. And he's going to finish him early. Could end up being exciting. The possibility is there. But I think the safe money's on Stylebender.
All right. So obviously we know the history between these two, and we've seen how powerful Alex has been in the UFC. But I think casuals seem to have forgot about Izzy. I know he's had a couple boring fights lately, but Alex is going to press into Izzy. He is a counter striker. And that's where he does his best work, is when people are trying to march him down. So I think we're actually going to see the Izzy of old during this fight. We're going to see the best version of him. So I imagine Izzy stays safe the first couple rounds. He gets Pereira's timing down. And then as Alex starts to tire a little bit, because he hasn't been outside of 3 rounds in MMA yet. As he tires a little bit, I think you'll see Izzy land a bit more. And once he hurts him, he's going to follow him up with a combo and finish him like he did Paulo Costa. I wasn't quite sure if we were going to agree on this one or not. So I'm glad that we did. So I think he needs to stay safe. But I'll say he gets a round 4 TKO for Izzy. Also, I would love for him to get some monster takedown and then just stand up and just, stand over him and say, this isn't kickboxing or some shit like that. He'll probably phrase it better, but I would love to see some of that. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hoping that, we see classic Izzy, the reason why he's the number 1 draw in the UFC at the moment. I hope he gets back to that.
Yeah. I agree. And I think we agreed on everything except for
Frankie.
Yeah, you went with the sentimental. Yeah. So we got a buddy Scott, who's going to be there, and he might even be might get a little heat with him. I know because he wants Frankie to win bad, but I hope he does. I don't know. I just have a feeling it's going to be one of those nights. We'll see what happens.
All right, yeah, super, super exciting card. Very hyped for it. One of the best cards we've had in a while. So we're looking forward to that. So get into the schedule. So November 19th, UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Spivak. That's going to be a 4 p.m. card also. So we're looking forward to that. And then November 26th, no UFC. So we'll be previewing previewing the 2022 PFL championships, headlined by Kayla Harris and whoever she's going to murder. Kayla Harrison and whoever she's going to murder. And then December 3rd, the UFC's back with Wonder Boy versus Kevin Holland.
Welcome back, Kevin. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy UFC 281 this week, and we'll see you next week here at the Combat.